In today's video, I'm going to be taking these 4 house designs from the last video, and I'll be showing you 4 landscape designs that you could add to upgrade your formerly box houses. A jungle, pine forest, urban street, and moon rock lie up ahead, so let's jump straight into it. Greetings friends, Khaios here. In the last episode, I showed you all 4 simple house designs that you could use to finally ditch your box houses. If you missed that video, you can find it linked in the description below. Today, I'll be taking those houses and showing you 4 landscaping styles that you could use to match the builds from the previous video. This caveman house will be located in a jungle, and that's where we'll start. But before we do, we're on the march towards 400,000 subscribers. If you'd like to help us reach that milestone and to tell the AI overlord that I'm doing a good job, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to help get my videos promoted and to make sure that you don't miss any future content. Soon, we'll go back in time a few thousand years and build a jungle for our modern Stone Age family. But first, I'll hop into T-Edit and spread these houses out a bit so that I have more room to decorate the area with. Starting with the caveman house, I'm going to be building a jungle with a twist. To start off, I'm going to make 2 small caves to fit the vibe of the house. The one on the left will be a dead end because it's actually going to be the house for something else. I'll get to that later in the time-lapse. The cave on the right is going to be more of a tunnel so that I can have a way of walking up to the house while still having an interesting landscape. With the rock in place, I'm going to start making the area more of a jungle by placing in mud and jungle grass. The cave on the left will be completely buried in mud, the cave on the right will have mud capping the top of it, and there will be patches of mud replacing all of the other normal grass that we have in the area. I make sure to put some patches of mud on the ceilings of the caves as well because I want to have a few vines growing from them. When the mud is in, I start smoothing the landscape with my hammer. I'm not a huge fan of full block steps, so I avoid them most of the time. Next, I texturize the stone once again by swapping in boulder block, then I start planting jungle grass all over the mud. Now that I'm planting, let's talk about trees. I want to avoid mahogany trees for this particular landscape. I want to do this because the entire reason I decided to make a caveman house in the first place was because of this boulder bookcase. These tiny boulders reminded me of the stone bowling balls that Fred and Barney used in the old Flintstones cartoon, so I don't really see these as books, I see them as bowling balls. While this house isn't exactly styled in the way a Flintstones house would be, the inspiration is there nonetheless, and that brings me to the trees. The show had a lot of palm trees in the background, so for this landscape, I want to plant palm trees too. Single blocks of sand will be scattered around, where I'll place an acorn and use fertilizer to instantly grow the palm trees. The yellow dots really stand out, so once the trees are planted, I paint them deep line in order to help blend them in with the jungle grass. The reason I paint them second is because if you paint them first, then grow the tree will be line, and that's not exactly what I want. Now it's time to add some background walls to the landscape, starting with the 2 caves. This will be using stone craggy wall and mottled stone painted gray, just like I did with the house. There's a randomized blend of the 2 walls, but when it comes to the cave entrances, I will make sure to use craggy stone wall at any of the really square points to make them look more fractured and less blocky. With the cave walls in, I continue by placing small pine tree wall and living leaf wall to make bushes. Both of these are painted deep lime. In the bushes, I use living leaf wall to avoid a lot of 90-degree angles, while the pine tree walls add more leafy textures. Continuing on with more plants, I bust out my rubble maker and start placing jungle plants around using the jungle grass seeds. I also include some mossy boulders in the rocky areas of the landscape. I try to alternate between 2 and 3 wide plants so I don't get too many repeating decorations. After that, I'll plant some brown moss on all of the stone. Since we can't plant moss on boulder block, this leaves portions of the cave where it's mossy and portions where it's not. Finally, I swap to the Mighty Tidy and place some stalactites and stalagmites. As usual, I sped up time off camera to get tall grass, tall moss, and jungle vines to grow, but we're not quite done yet. There are a few things that I want to add to bring even more life to this build. Firstly, I'll place down some magic water droppers so we can get drips in the caves. Thanks to you amazing viewers, I just learned that we have echo coding available pre-hard mode now. In the past, we only got access to it after defeating Plantera. Now, however, we can buy it from the painter after getting the mechanic. Thanks to this, I'm going to be placing a block underneath the vines, then actuate it and echo coat it. This will prevent the vines from growing longer, while also not disrupting the appearance and not preventing movement. Next, I want to place down some fireflies, so I'm going to place down walls in random places using my ice rod to assist, then place down some fireflies and echo coat their stands. While we do need blocks or walls to place down the critter stands, the critters don't require a block or wall to remain, so we could break all of these walls afterwards. I absolutely love the fireflies as they add so much light to my build, especially when things are dark. I want this jungle to be absolutely buzzing with insect life, so in addition to the fireflies, I'm also going to add swarms of normal flies with echo-coated actuated poo blocks scattered around. Finally, there's one last detail I want to add to the build. I mentioned during the time-lapse that the cave on the left was going to be home to something else. Well, I'm going to plop down a mannequin and we'll set up that resident. Firstly, I'll paint the mannequin to give it a stone-looking base. Then I'll equip it with Slasher's mysterious skull to turn it into a raptor. But why stop here? By equipping the bone helm and the ham bat from the Don't Starve Together crossover, we can have a cute little raptor wearing a bone helmet holding its dinner. Now just swing your hammer at the mannequin to get the ham where we want it, and here we go. A different kind of jungle landscape for our caveman house. If you all watched the previous video, and why would you not have, you'll know what we're moving on to next. First, I have to get started on general landscaping. I want to have a small pond outside of this house, so I'll dig a pit and level out the ground on the other side of it. Inside of the pond area, I'm going to place down brown painted clay block. This looks nearly identical to dirt blocks, but the key difference is that grass can't grow on it. This will prevent grass from growing into our pond. I also add a couple of stone piles to add block diversity to the landscape, using boulder block to vary the texture. Now it's time to slope everything. Obviously, if there's a pond right in front of the front door of the house, there would be a bridge, which I'm building out of brown painted ashwood, ebonwood fence, and rich mahogany fence. The ebonwood fence over the top has a second piece placed every 2 spaces just to vary the fence height. The bridge supports will be ebonwood fence on the top and rich mahogany on the bottom, with ashwood wall filling in the gaps between each of the supports. Once water is in the pond, I'm going to plant some trees. This time I won't be using any actually grown trees. I'll be placing Christmas trees throughout the area. Since these can only be purchased from Santa, you can only get them during a Christmas event. You don't have to wait until December to do this, however, as you could either craft a naughty present in hard mode, defeat the frost moon and get it that way, or you can make a world with the secret seed jingle all the way. With the small pine trees in, I continue adding background walls to the landscape. Living leaf wall will be used to make the bushes. This time I won't be painting them. Additionally, unlike the last build, I will not use pine tree wall in these bushes because I plan on using it later in the build and I want to avoid using too much repetition. Now I want some larger custom trees. This time I'll be building pine trees. In the past, I would build them primarily out of actuated leaf blocks because I absolutely hated the way pine tree block looked. This had some issues, however, as the custom pine trees would constantly rain falling leaves that just didn't fit the vibe. Now, however, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I love pine tree block. This block goes from F tier to a solid A tier for me. It has a completely new texture in this update and it looks so much better. It also adjusts its shape a lot better than it used to, allowing us to get more natural looking pine trees when building with the block. Even better, we now have pine tree wall, which blends perfectly with the block. This block isn't perfect, however. When we try to make a trunk for the tree, the pine tree still only has a single block of a very thin bark before making leaves. We do have pine wood, however it doesn't blend with pine tree block, so it's not a great option either. For my custom pine trees, I'm going to be using brown painted rich mahogany fence. This will run most of the way up the tree, so that way we can see bits of the bark through the leaves. Then I shape a rough cone with a wider bottom and a narrow top. My hammer and pickaxe punch holes in the leaves, which will show some of the tree bark behind it, but also give us a more rough and varied texture. In those gaps, as well as on the edges of the trees in some spots, I will use pine tree wall to fill out the tree even further. Once I have 6 custom trees built of various different sizes, I actuate them all. This allows us to move unimpeded, and it blends the block in the wall even better, making the trees look even more natural. The best part is, unlike leaf block, these do not drop falling leaves, so our pine trees will not be shedding constantly. As much as I love falling leaf particles, I don't want them in my pine trees. Now, with the pine trees done, I add some decorative piles around using the rubble maker with some stone and grass seeds. So we mostly have a finished pine forest for our librarian's house, but there are some small details that I want to add. Firstly, on the bridge, I'm going to make some lampposts with shadewood fence, ash wood, using brown paint for both of those, and some carriage lanterns from the dungeon. Still focusing on the bridge, you might notice tiny 1-pixel gaps between the supports and the bridge. These are caused by the rough texture of the ashwood block and its wall, and I hate them, so I'm going to place brown painted dynasty wood right over these spaces, as it has a perfectly flat texture and it will get rid of those gaps. I'm also going to run some ebonwood fence in the pine trees slightly higher up to give a thinner trunk further up the trees. Like the previous landscape, I want this one to have a lot of critters in it. This time, however, I want to have a bunch of fairies and some dragonflies near the pond. So here we go again with some floating walls, placed critters, and then we echo coat the stands and remove the walls. We now have the completed enchanted pine forest, and it also looks great at night due to those fairies. I'm really happy with how things are going so far, but the next 2 builds are going to be very, very different from what we've been doing so far. Before I get started on the landscape, I read your comments and I have indeed made Jiminy Halpert a permanent resident in the office, so worry not, our little grasshopper isn't going anywhere. Now, let's landscape the city. Unlike the previous 2 landscapes, flat is the name of the game here, but I'm putting these builds side by side, so I'm going to quickly make a stone area where I'll be building stairs to get from one build to the other to have them blend seamlessly. As for landscaping the office, I think I'm going to split it into 2 halves. The left half will be the street side and the right half will be a city park. But first, as I said, I need to flatten the area out, then mow the grass. On the street side, I'll be making sidewalks out of red stucco painted gray with stone accent slabs and stone block underneath them. The street, to nobody's surprise, is going to be asphalt block with a white team platform as the lane divider, which will be painted yellow. In a grass patch in front of the office, I'll be building 2 trimmed trees with pine tree wall and brown painted ebonwood fence. Some gray painted palm wood underneath the blocks will give us a small border wall. Next to the street, I'm building a streetlight with gray painted rich mahogany fence, ebonwood fence, honey platform, brass shelf, and a lamppost on top. The brass shelves will be sloped into stairs, and then green banners will be hung from them. I decorate the area further with a couple of benches and trash cans. Now onto the traffic lights. The posts are gray painted rich mahogany beams on each side of the street, and the cable connecting them in this case is forbidden platform painted black because I love how thick that platform is, but that suddenly makes this a hard mode build. So if you want a pre-hard mode version, I would recommend using boom platform with black paint. From that platform line, I place 2 rows of black painted silk rope. I want these to hang from the platform, but if I put rope strictly on the bottom side of it, the rope will not actually connect to the platform at all. However, if I put ropes on top of it as well, they will fully connect. We will fix this rope that's sticking out of the top of it in a little bit, but first, however, let's place some deep yellow painted copper plating wall for the traffic lights. Flanking the sides of them will be gold platforms, again with deep yellow paint. For the actual colored lights, I'll be using pink and purple silly balloon. These hold color amazingly, they're perfectly round, but they will also cause the platforms to stick to them. On the left side, obviously we don't want the lights facing the camera, as that wouldn't really make sense, so you might think we could just echo coat it. Unfortunately, when we do that, the platforms will no longer attach to the blocks. However, if we use echo block, they will cling. but that will make this a post-Plantera build, so I'll just end up using yellow painted copper plating and I'll actuate it. For the traffic signals, I'll paint them and actuate 2 of them to make the lights look like they've been turned off. With the traffic lights done, I can hide away the top rope segments with some echo coating. Even though we're echo coating the rope below the platform still tries to attach to the rope above it, which allows us to have the rope connected to the platform without showing the rope that it's trying to connect to above it. With that done, I'll build another street lamp on the other side and decorate the landscape a little further. That wraps up the street side of the house, so let's quickly do the park side. Another sidewalk with stone slab and stucco will be the alley behind the office building. A line of brown painted rich mahogany fence will be a fence that separates the alley from the park. A trash can and a lamppost will finish up that area. In the park, I build 3 more of the trees that we have on the other side of the building with pine tree wall and ebonwood fence. Then I want to have a little picnic set up, so I make a checkered blanket using deep red and white painted hardened sand wall, placed behind the block so only a little bit of it peeks out. Around the picnic blanket, I put down some bushes with living leaf wall. The reason I'm using the same bushes and pine trees in this build is because it directly connects with the last area and I want them to make a seamless transition. And now that we have boulder platform stairs done, let's get the final details in. For the picnic, I'll be using an Easter workbench as it's just visually a picnic basket. 2 plates will flank it, one with a bottle of sake and the other with a Froggle bun wedge from the Don't Starve Together crossover. I don't actually want to see the plates, so I'll just echo coat those away. Now, I want to have a few insects in the build, but not nearly as much as the last 2. I just want to have some flies hovering over the trash cans. So poo block, actuators, and echo coating will accomplish that easily. And with that, we have a completed city landscape for our office build. I did consider making the traffic light fully functional, but I think I'll save something like that for a wiring related video in the future. And speaking of the future, let's go landscape the moonplate house that we made the other day. Obviously, this house is not where we last saw it. I snatched it up in T-Edit and plopped it down in the space layer, because this moon-themed house is going to be landscaped on the moon. Well, a very, very tiny one. First things first, I don't need any of this dirt or grass anymore. Second, I need to build a circle. I'll be building it out of stone for now, but I'll be swapping in different materials afterwards. If you're wondering how I build perfect circles like this in Terraria, sometimes I do it by eye for smaller circles, but other times, especially when working with large circles like this one, I'll follow a circle generator guide, and I'm using one for this build as well. If you're curious what tool I use to help me build circles, I'll leave a link to the generator that I use in the description of this video. Essentially what I do is I enter the width of my circle, in this case I chose 53 tiles. It will generate an image of a pixel circle, which I can then use to count the number of blocks that I need to place around the edges of it while I build. I don't need to count everything in the middle because I could just fill that in by eye. It's not extremely easy to keep track of block counting while building. A second monitor aids in this, but the guide helps massively. Once it's done, obviously I fill the entire area with blocks. All of today's landscapes took me around 20 minutes to do, however this one took me over 30 minutes despite it having the least amount of detail for me to talk about, and that's all thanks to building the circle and filling in the rock. After nearly 2,000 stones are placed, I decide to give the moon a few craters to help make the shape a bit more interesting and to make it feel less man-made, which I do by digging out small pits on various sides of the rock. While you can't currently see the bottom side of the moon, I am detailing it, and I'll give you all a look when everything's done. I just couldn't fit it all into the screen at once, and there were some issues with space, but I'll get to that later. After this is all done, I'll take my hammer and start sloping everything. Now, it's time to make the texture a lot more interesting. First, I swap in boulder block. Big shock, as that's clearly becoming one of my all-time favorite blocks, but after that, I swap in hardened sand painted gray where all of the craters are. This is a bit lighter than the stone and boulder block with a smoother texture, so I feel like it makes it look like settled debris at the impact sites. Once those are in, I start mixing in desert fossil that has also been painted gray. It's darker than the other 3 materials used in the moon, and it's more rough, which gives it a great bit of contrast with the other blocks. Since hardened sand and desert fossil do not blend with each other, and they do not blend with stone and boulder block, there are a ton of visible air gaps between all of the materials. I grabbed some layered dirt wall from the graveyard crafting, and I paint it white, and I start placing it inside of all of those gaps to fill in the spaces and tie all of the textures together nicely. I also make the wall stick out at various areas of the moon's surface to vary its exterior shape slightly and give it more interest. With the rock complete, it's time to detail it. I want to use some dust square lamps as they look like little tech antennae, which I feel fits the vibe nicely. I could just end the build here, but I've been adding trees all day, so why not do it now? No, the moon doesn't have any trees on it, but the moon also isn't a tiny little rock with a house on it either, so shush. These alien trees are going to have trunks made out of white painted living mahogany and living wood. I could actuate these if I wanted to, but seeing as how there isn't any way of walking to the house without flying, we could just fly over the trees anyway, so I leave them bright and solid. Once the trunks have been shaped and sloped, I move on to the rest of the tree. I want these to look almost like they're just made out of bubbles, so I take cyan paint and silly pink balloon wall and I start placing it around the base of the trees, adding only a handful of them per tree. I don't want these to be extremely lush, as I feel it looks better with these being a bit thin. When the walls are in place, I do the same with silly pink balloon, once again painted cyan. If you wanted to do this pre-hard mode, you'd stop at this point and call it a day. However, if you want to build them in hard mode, you can do this next step and get even more interesting looking trees. Grab Bubble from the party girl and place them around with cyan paint. They are slightly larger in appearance than the silly balloon thanks to their brighter borders, so it gives the illusion of different bubble sizes, but also the bubbles are animated so it makes it feel like the trees are alive and pulsating. Finally, I want to add a few platforms with matching deskwear candelabras to give a final touch to the build. And here's the end product for our futuristic moon-themed house. It's entirely different from everything else that I built today, and I'm quite pleased with how the landscape came out. As you can see, I did texture the bottom side, but the main reason I didn't show in the build is that this isn't a large world, so my space biome is rather small, and we technically leave the space layer when we're on the underside of this floating rock, which is one of the reasons I suggested things like a biome monolith in my 1.5 video wishlist, linked in the description if you wanted to check that video out. Let's take one last look at the landscapes in this video to match the houses that we built from the previous video. I hope you liked them, and I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to leave a comment telling me what you all think, and leave a like if you think I'm doing a good job. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch all of my future content. Thank you all for supporting my channel in that way, it really means a lot to me. And if you'd like to support my channel in a more direct way, check out my Patreon for various rewards, such as access to my world saves, including this one, my video schedule, your name in the credits, and access to my Patreon Discord server. YouTube members also get the same rewards, as well as an icon next to their names in the comments of my videos. A special thanks to my biggest supporters for the month, Kasu and Slathozar Porb. And be sure to check out my channel artist, MythicalWater, linked in the description below. Thank you all very much for watching. Be back soon with a new video. Happy building!